Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc sheep podcast. Each episode will bring latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. As we head into the autumn, we're joined by Dr. Frank Campion to talk to us about managing yoke condition in this crucial lead up to mating. We explore why body condition scores are such a key driver of flock productivity for the year ahead and how current yoke condition on the better farm flocks compares to last year. Frank highlights the management changes that have made a difference on these farms this season and outlines some practical steps farmers should focus on in the final weeks before ram turnout. We hear now from Frank.
Body condition score is a really, easy way that we can assess the nutritional status of a flock. So we don't need any fancy weighing scales or anything like that. It's just putting our hands along the back, particularly or between the last rib and the hip bone, and we're feeling that kind of lumbar spinal area there, and we're feeling the bones coming up vertically and out horizontally. And what we're looking for there is the degree or lack of fat and muscle cover that's there. And I suppose the reason that's important is that as we go through the year, there's periods of time when the O is under nutritional pressure and periods of time when she's not under nutritional pressure. So your body condition score is effectively a sink and a source during those types of years. So, at the moment, she's only looking after herself. She's not milking. She's not lamb, anything like that. So any excess nutrients that are going into her, she's able to put back into body reserves, lay down muscle and lay down fat. Equally, when we come along next year and we get lambing out of the way, she won't be able to consume enough feed to meet her energy and protein requirements. So she'll want to mobilize those reserves to meet her energy and protein demands so she can milk to her peak capacity. I suppose we always look at condition score in terms of an exact figure. So, generally is the way it's done is a scale of 0 to 5, be that in half or quarter increments. I suppose that's important, particularly from a research point of view or a knowledge transfer point of view. But for most people, if we can tell the basics of what's a tinio and what's a fat jaw, a tinio and what's an ideal condition jaw, well then that's going to be enough for us to make the required gains and improvements in performance that we need. I suppose the targets we would set, so take it from the concept of the Better Farm program at the minute, the targets we would set at the minute is when we go to do the condition score the O's at mating is we want the average condition score of the flock to be 3.5. But the other way we look at that is because an average can be a slightly dangerous figure, is that we want as few EOs as possible under body score 3. So our minimum body score we want is 3. And, if EOs are less than 3 at mating, we're asking the question, is there an underlying issue? Should they be going to the ram at all or should they be culled from the flock? But equally, if there is some of them that are under 3 for genuine reason, we want to keep that to at least below 10, but ideally below 5% of the flock.
Frank, it's something we have discussed a number of times, and it's an important topic, particularly at this stage of the season. On the better farms, you're doing a lot more looking at condition right throughout the year, and I know you've just completed a recent round of condition score on them. It's maybe no harm to take a snapshot of where those flocks are relative to last year. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in August, we completed a round of condition scores on all the lowland flocks. And I suppose that's our post-weaning / pre-mating body condition score. And, people love to talk about mating body score. It has lots of benefits, but I suppose this one, the pre-mating one, is nearly the most important one because it tells us where we're sitting in terms of condition score and what we need to do to get that condition score right. So when we looked across the flocks, this is our second year going out now in August doing a condition score. And what we saw is that, yes, there's a lot fewer tinios in the flocks this year for a number of reasons. One reason being it was a much easier year this year in terms of weather conditions. For most of the flocks, particularly the ones not in the southeast, there was better grass growing conditions. So there wasn't a need on the O to reserve or to mobilize as much reserves. She wasn't under as much pressure. But the other side of it too is, I suppose, with the increasing amount of measurements we've been doing, we've been putting a lot more focus on managing that with the farms in terms of, correctly identifying tinios, marking them, and looking at the reasons for it, dealing with, flock health issues like lameness, internal parasites, etc. that might cause that, but also getting our nutrition right. I suppose what we saw in our last round of visits, which was a kind of our 8 weeks pre-mating one, was that, there's a couple of flocks there where condition score is, already good. So we have an average of 3.5. We've less than 5% of the O's under body score 3. That, a couple of those flocks that are there or thereabouts at this stage. So they're within 0.1 or 0.2 on an average of getting to 3.5. We have probably another 40-50% of the flocks that are sitting within easy reach of that. So they're kind of 0.3 of a condition score away from being where they need to be on average. So they have those 8 weeks to get that condition back on. And then we have another small cohort of the flocks, who maybe need to get the average condition up by 0.5 to 0.7. And, might have a 30 to 50% of the ewes that are sitting less than three at the moment. So they have a significant body of work to do to try and get those ewes back into correct condition. I suppose the reason I say it's a significant body of work is there's no quick fix to your body condition score. So it takes about 8 to 10 weeks to put on a full unit of body condition score. And if we look at that a different way, if we look at that in terms of average daily gain, your typical 80 kilo lowland Joe, if she was to try and build half unit condition score over 9 weeks, she'd need to be doing 76 grams per day, or over 6 weeks, 114 grams per day. Considering our ewes, they're much slower grown, they've reached a plateau in their growth. That's a high level of growth. And consider that a lamb, a fast growing animal, is probably only doing about 180, 200 grams per day on grass at this stage of the year. So it takes a bit of management and it takes time to build that condition.
So if we were to take a look at that, like overall, a lot of positives in that in terms of a lot of them put on more weight. We certainly look, we know it's been an easier year, but there's always going to be that cohort of ewes that worked a bit harder, lost that bit of condition. What happened on those farms different this year than previous years that they actually are in a better condition for a lot of them? And maybe for just those two or three that still have a bit of work to do, what happened with those?
I suppose if we start with the ones that still have the work to do, or still have the most amount of work to do, most flocks will have work to do in terms of even if the ewes are in good condition now, we have work to do to make sure that they maintain that or get that extra little bit that they need. But I suppose for the flocks that have significant amount of work to do, some of that was maybe, I suppose, a change of system on the farm over the last year or two that's presenting different challenges in terms of nutrition and managing different things like lameness, parasites, etc., and adjusting to that. For some of the flocks, for a couple of flocks in that situation, it's just maybe taking the eye off the ball slightly during the middle of the summer, and which is probably easy to do after a good year. Things are flying along. You might get a bit complacent. It happens to us all. And then, one of the particular flocks, I think, is a good example of maybe what can happen when you take different options for managing tin ewes. And so far as there was a lot of tin ewes there last year, took the decision after weaning that there was tin was going to be culled. And yeah, things looked better at mating, looked better at mid-pregnancy last year, but we're back into a similar situation now again this year because when we get to weaning, we want somebody else to be tin. It means they've mobilised their reserves, they put it into milk production, they put it into lamb production. But what we need to see in those ewes then is that they're able to regain that condition during the dry period. And if we go and we just cull the tin ewes without looking at some of the underlying conditions that we know causes these body control issues, so that's, looking at the teeth, well, where is the dentition, looking at the health plan on the farm in terms of dealing with lameness and other issues. Are we culling underperforming or ewes that have genuine issues such as prolapse, etc., or some of those slipping back in the whole time? And then in terms of nutrition for the ewe during the year, in terms of fine, do we want the ewe to do a bit of work at times cleaning out paddocks, but realistically, once we get those 8 weeks out from mating, she also needs some degree of good quality grass. So it might be a day or two a week doing some hard work cleaning out the paddocks after lambs, but also now needs time on good grass herself during that week to get some condition back on. So they're the issues you need to address to really long-term deal with poor body condition score. For the flocks, I suppose, Kieran, that you're saying, that are in good shape, what have they done different? It's addressed those issues. I keep coming back to it. They've looked at the health issues, fluke, things like that creep up on lameness. We've done a big bit of work with Jake Delaney over last year looking at lameness, and we've seen that's had a huge effect on some of the condition scores in these flocks. Correctly marking and identifying tin ewes and culling the ones that are not able to regain condition during the dry period. That's generally an indication of some underlying condition, either a health condition or something that prevents her from performing within your system. And those ewes are better off removing the flock. If your target is 100 ewes, you're better to have 90 productive ewes than to keep those 10 underperforming or poor quality ewes just to say that you have 100 ewes, because they're the 10 that's going to cause you the problems for the rest of the year. And then, like I said, the nutrition in terms of the covers, it's the same thing for those ewes that we've got in good condition and managing them now. It's making sure that they have good quality grass leading up to mating.
Frank's probably one of the biggest things with those flocks is just starting that wee bit earlier. Like if I had to take what you were saying earlier in terms of building that condition, it's starting earlier that post-weaning period is probably the most basic change we can make in addressing that.
Yeah, exactly, Kieran. Like I said, there's no quick fix for this. You have to start in time. So what we've done what we would be saying to the better farm flocks and what we're doing with them is that, you wean, you give them 2-3 weeks to dry off, and from that, once you get 3 weeks after weaning, you're managing your condition from there on. And to be fairness, to the flocks that have, followed that plan. The lads have put in an awful lot of work on it, to be fair to them. But I think if we brought any of them on here, they'd say that they're reaping the benefits of it. They're seeing the extra performance from the O's. They're seeing it's that bit easier to manage in terms of, O's that are in good condition are less likely to have issues during the year. And the big thing they're seeing is they're seeing a better quality of lamb performance. In terms of number of lambs is the obvious one, but also in terms of growth rates after lambing when the has the body reserves to put into milk production.
No, just look, it leaves all life easier. And and if we are talking about a bit of work there, but the work at them is the splitness, identifying, and then I assume, Frank, in those cases, they're just running those with replacement new lambs or feeding new lamb grip.
Yeah, it's about being practical with it. When we talk about condition score in the winter, we always say, you put a tin single in with the twins. It's the same thing here, if there's those tin ewes, make sure they're well marked, put them in with the old lambs and let them run on with them for the extra few weeks. Give them that extra bit of, grass, not to have them grazing out any paddocks, give them that extra chance. And then it's been, I suppose, ruthless when it comes to mating time. If those ewes have failed to regain condition, then it's removing them out of flock. And it's, I suppose, the way we always say it to the lads, Kieran, and I think the way we knew to say it to them first, it's a small investment in time for long-term rewards.
No, I think it's a fair point. Look, we're 1 to 5 weeks out for a lot of these from mating, for a lot of flocks around the country. What do we need to focus on from now in that lead-in in them last couple of weeks? And I suppose, Frank, in saying that, there's probably some farmers, particularly maybe in the west for grass goat, has been good supplies of there. Might be a little bit kind of nervous about going over the top with them or that. What's your advice in this lead into ram turnout?
Yeah, so look, I think I wouldn't get overly worried about going over the top of it. So in mid-season lambing systems where you're predominantly grass-based, this notion of an overfat Joe is probably overhyped. So we took all the mating body and score records from the better farms over 5 different mating seasons and we broke them down into 3 categories. Tin ewes, there were ewes that were less than body score 3, ewes that we considered fit, ewes that were body score 3 to 4, and ewes that we considered fat, which were ewes that were over body score 4. And within those, only 4% of those ewes were fat and 13% were tin. So basically there was over 3 times as many tin ewes as fat ewes. And the tin ewes are the ones more likely to cause you the problems. So at this stage of the year, if your ewes are in good condition, it's about maintaining a good level of laying nutrition so that they can maintain or even build another little bit of condition. They're not going to come over fat. If you're worried about tin ewes, look, yeah, we're getting close to mating. It's going to be very hard to fully get them back on track. But I suppose at least even starting late, it's to get on top of any of the issues that are potentially causing it. Check them out. Is there an issue there with dentition that's causing them? A reason that they're not able to put on condition? Look at your fluke and parasite control plan. Is there something that you've missed during the year? Tackle lameness conditions. And then look at, is there ewes there that were identified for culling last year that weren't culled, and making sure they're removed from the flock so that you're not carrying the problems into next year. It's those kind of simple basics, and if we put all those basics together, you get an overall big lift in performance.
I think we also have to be conscious too, like grass quality is not as good as it is here in the season at the moment. So certainly if supplies are there, quality might be just as good. They really do need mind them.
They do. And I suppose the one caution with that is, and it's some question that we're often asked is, look at if I go meal feeding my ewes now for the last few weeks, that's not the solution either. The ewe should be able to regain some condition on grass, otherwise she's not fit for the system. But sometimes we can spend a lot of money putting meal into these ewes. We then have to pull it at mating time. That condition can fall away quickly, but also we've probably we fed that ewe a very high plain nutrition. She potentially then has a big litter size, but she hasn't got the condition score to be able to manage that throughout the rest of the year. So it's about getting as much on as you can with your grass-based diet.
Frank, good having you on. It was good getting an update of where the better farms are at this year. And look, surely we'll chat to you again before the year's out.
Thanks, Kieran.
We'll leave it there for this week's episode. I'd like to thank Frank for coming on once again, offering some very useful advice at the moment. Certainly is something to have a big impact on productivity next season. That's it for me. For updates from our sheep programme, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts.